Well, our president is co-chair of the UN Secretary General's eminent group of advocates for the Sustainable Development Goals. I am his Sherpa in that respect. And there are three broad streams of work that I do to support the president in that functional role. The first has to do with strategic policy advice on the Sustainable Development Goals. And importantly, tracking the intergovernmental conversations on the Sustainable Development Goals, and certainly preparing policy briefs for the president in that respect, equipping him with a cutting-edge knowledge on the Sustainable Development Goals. And within that stream of work, also support the president in articulating advocacy messages, because the functional role as co-chair is largely around advocacy for accelerated implementation of the goals. The second stream of support that I provide to the president in my functional role is really helping broker smart strategic partnerships. As you heard earlier today, the goals can only be achieved if all of us indeed work together. It is about partnerships, but importantly, it is about smart partnerships. Partnerships with bilateral institutions, partnerships of society, and partnerships with the private sector. So that, is one cluster of work that we do to support the president. There's a third area of work which is a priority for the president in his role as co-chair, which is data and innovation. How do we particularly leverage data to help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? I call them three key imperatives, if we're going to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. One of them is mass mobilization, and I think that's where you're heading towards, mass mobilization. The second is really bankable programs, and the third is obviously financing. So the point around sensitizing communities, citizens around the goals, and getting them to own the goals is absolutely important. Here in Ghana, working with the National Development Planning Commission and the Ministry of Planning, we have articulated a communication strategy to really take the goals local. And that strategy is going to be implemented big time in 2019. Even before then, there are a number of initiatives, sensitization initiatives that we've been working on. We now have a major platform of dialogue with private sector, because private sector is absolutely important for us. The president himself personally chaired a breakfast meeting with 40 CEOs to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Barely a month ago, a number of us were in Kumasi. There was a major event that was held under the patronage of Otumfuo, the Asantehene. We branded it as the Royal Dialogue on the SDGs, and that brought together private sector, captains of industry, civil society leaders. It brought traditional leaders. The youth were there talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the things we want to do, next in particular, when it comes to taking the goals local, is how do we start engaging the district assemblies and local authorities so they can use the goals as the basis for local planning. And this is all framed within a communication strategy that we do have. Next year, we will also be embarking on what we'll be scaling up on engagement of strategic constituencies. So already we are reaching out to the National House of Chiefs. We are having conversations with the leadership of the media. We are looking at engaging sports and entertainment personalities, to frame a collective partnership that will help us take the goals to the people. Because at the end of the day, these goals can only succeed. We can only succeed if the goals are owned by communities, and if communities can use the goals as the basis of accountability to hold their leaders indeed accountable. The business case for the private sector to invest in the SDGs, for me, is very clear. The value proposition is very clear to many in the private sector, and I'm delighted to say that there are a number of private sector entities that are beginning to align their businesses behind the goals. And I think that for me is clearly an important start. I think what we will need to do clearly as government is to see how we can better incentivize the private sector to really scale up the alignment behind the SDGs. Interestingly, I think there's a conversation in government right now which is looking at a possible incentives regime directly aimed at private sector operators that invest directly within the SDG space. And I think that for me will be a best practice, must be certainly a very welcome development for government and also the private sector. I think within the context of the stronger partnership with the private sector, and this is my own personal view, I think we would need to look at an arrangement with the private sector where there are direct pecuniary benefits to the private sector by them investing in specific goals. That arrangement is being discussed right now, but it has not quite been formalized. But I'm delighted that conversation has started. There are two things we will have to do. One is that within the context of those bankable programs, we clearly need to have a very clear, transparent way of measuring outcome and indeed results. And what that will do for us is that one can then tell directly the correlation between private sector's investment in that sphere with the outcomes that indeed are being achieved. And I think that is important. And it's a conversation we will need to have, and we need to try and establish a clear methodology indeed to make it happen.